I hate British accents, musicals, Mary Poppins, and somehow I watched Saving Mr. Banks last night and loved it. I don't know how this happened or how this is possible. I don't drink tea and I am currently drinking tea. What is going on? I don't understand. I'm Nathan.
I'm Tyler.
And welcome to Ignore the Bell. So we are going to do a review of Saving Mr. Banks, which, if you did not know, is I think it's 2013 is when it was released, and it is a film essentially about the making of Mary Poppins. And the author of the book, P.L. Travers, who does not want to sell the rights to Disney, and Walt Disney absolutely wants those rights. So Tom Hanks is playing Walt Disney, Emma Thompson is playing P.L. Travers. And yeah, somehow I watched it and I was actually really impressed, and I figured we should probably talk about this.
Yeah, and I have seen it a couple times,
A
so
couple times.
I own
Wow.
it. I
Oh,
really
it
enjoy
yeah, it
it.
is well worth a second or third viewing, I'm sure. Like I was actually floored by how good this movie is.
Yeah, yeah. So this should be a great discussion, and we will probably also talk a little bit about the 1964 classic. Whether or not that's a good thing or not is
Yeah.
going to be
Oh
part of the
man.
debate. But 1964 classic Mary Poppins by Walt
Uh-huh.
Disney.
Yeah, that's my nightmare right there. Mary Poppins on replay. Oh boy. Um, so we do have a sponsor though. Before we get into the actual review, then we have a
Oh,
sponsor. So our sponsor is Mary Poppins Banister Polish. Simply apply to the bottom of your trousers and then get on the banister. The polish only works in one direction, only if you're ascending the banister. Will not work if you're descending. Becomes incredibly flammable if you're descending the banister. So you can only go up. All right. That's a great sponsor, by the way. I don't know how they don't
absolutely.
get sued more often, though, with trousers catching on fire.
If they do, then clearly that person was a liar. That's
Your pants are literally on fire.
Oh,
All
man.
right, folks. I hope you enjoy.
Oh man, I wish this discussion could go on forever.
Ignore the bell. We're gonna keep going, people.
All right, saving Mr. Banks. So, I'll explain to you basically how this happened. Um, so, I watched the night before I watched Christopher Robin. I don't know if
Okay.
you've seen that with
I
you,
I have not
Gregor.
seen that. I'm really interested in it though.
Yeah.
These are the sorts of Disney reimaginings or revisitings that I am actually interested in.
Yes, the ones that are so valid, that are so worth doing, where there's so much territory like to be explored. This is such fertile ground for excellent stories. And yeah, so I watched that and then I'm like, well, I loved that, so I'll try saving Mr. Banks. And then Judith absolutely loves Mary Poppins and musicals and British stuff. So I'm like, all right, this will make her happy, and I'll watch this. And yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I saw it in theaters when it came out. I somehow managed to convince everybody else in our family to go see it for Christmas Day, which is one of our family's traditions to go see movies on Christmas Day. As you can imagine, David, our brother-in-law, did not enjoy it.
No, this film, I guarantee this would be an impossible film for him to enjoy. I
Yes.
like if I can't think of a film that would be more unenjoyable for him.
Right.
He's just like, Joe, where are the explosions? Somebody throw a pie.
Yes, but oh my goodness, I enjoyed this movie so much that I asked for it and got it for my birthday on DVD. And yeah, it's such a good movie. Um,
It's
you know,
incredible how good it is.
yeah, I mean, you really would not expect that there would be that much to talk about with Walt Disney just trying to get the rights to Mary Poppins, which is really like what took me by surprise because the movie was sort of advertised as, how Mary Poppins got made. And, I thought it was about Mary Poppins being made, but it really is about how Mary Poppins got made, which is an interesting
It's
concept.
it's really interesting. And so to me, like this is what's so strange is I look at this and I mean, as I was watching it, I couldn't help but just be struck by how freaking brave this movie is. How this movie got greenlit is so surprising because this movie is doing really challenging things and things that just I like I say, I can't believe that a studio like Disney would go ahead with a movie like this. And here's what I mean.
Absolutely.
You've got your protagonist, essentially, P.L. Travers, the writer, like, you are putting her in the lead, and she is such a grump. You know what I mean? She could so easily be, unlikable. And I have recently been going through this yesterday, interacting with a publishing professional and being told about a manuscript that I have of why would you have this part in there? Like it makes your protagonist unlikable. And I'm like, because not every there's definitely unlikable aspects to even the most likable people that actually
Absolutely.
creates a fully fleshed out character. And that's real life.
Yeah,
Uh,
otherwise then you're just having, you know, superheroes in general, but especially Superman, where it's like, well, like if all he ever does is good things, and it's like I can't relate to that. That's not
exactly.
me. That's not I don't enjoy watching somebody who's perfect. I want
Right.
to see somebody who is imperfect. But you are absolutely right. Like, PL Travers they cast they are telling the story about how an author did not want Disney to do something.
Yeah.
Disney themselves made this film about how
Disdains Disney. She
yeah,
is disgusted by
she
Disney.
she's like, "Oh, Winnie the Pooh, get out of here." Like this
Well,
stuff
she's so upset. She's like,
airing.
hey, Milne, oh, because he's a British author who wrote Winnie the Pooh, right? And she's just like, you wrote such a good book. How could you do this? You sold out to Disney. And I'm like, hey, Disney did not ruin Winnie the Pooh. The film
Yeah.
is excellent. But okay.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, no, it is staggering how Disney decided that this was a good idea. And I do think that it is a good idea, but it completely retextualizes again one of their classic films
Yeah.
at the same time because you know most people I would say don't pick up on the fact that it is about saving Mr. Banks, that it's not about the children, that you know,
Right.
and it's like, well, whether or not Walt Disney actually believed that at the time,
Mm.
or whether he said that just to get the rights from PL Travers, that, oh, I understand where you're coming from. I don't know. I feel like he did have that in the back of his mind where he was like, yeah, no, this is a family picture and it's about this father who isn't paying attention to his kids.
Yeah.
It's not about the kids going on a fun little adventure. But it really does, because I mean, like I do really enjoy the film Mary Poppins, but I hadn't thought of it that way before, where it's like, oh,
Right.
it's not about like Mary Poppins is obviously uh, giving some level of enjoyment and fun activities to the children, but ultimately, like her ultimate goal is to help the father to realize that there are more important things than working, that he needs to focus more on the children. And it's yeah, it just completely retextualizes the film.
It does. And that's like what you said at the beginning. That points out why this kind of a movie makes so much sense for Disney to do a
Yes.
return to something like Mary Poppins because you watch this and I hate Mary Poppins and I legitimately want to see it now. Like I want to watch
Yeah.
it again because you know, it, absolutely it does retextualize the film, where you realize that thematically it's doing something really, really interesting, and even on a plot level, like it becomes such a fascinating text to look at after watching Saving Mr. Banks, because when you're thinking about it, you're like, well, Mary Poppins, she comes in and then she leaves at the end, and that part seems so strange to me as a kid. But in the context of like seeing the inspiration behind her story, then you understand, oh, right, because you needed a barrister like this. You needed a nanny to come in for a period of time, even though you had a mother, and that she, you know, is so defensive of Mrs. Banks, right? That she,
Right.
that she's not lazy, right? Because like
Yes.
the one, I think it's BJ Novak. I forget the character's name, but I think BJ Novak is, he's the one
Mhm.
who's like, she's lazy. She should get a job. What's wrong with her? And she's like, she's doing the best she can, or whatever. She really defends her. And you realize why when you get the full backstory. And it's also that's another aspect of the film that's so brilliant to me, is that this is a film that is doing these time jumps so effectively, that this film has to be
Mhm.
told in this way, that it's really taking place over two different time periods, and that you've got two chronologies going on, and you're jumping between her childhood and then her in Los Angeles potentially selling the rights to Disney.
Yeah,
And then as you get more of that backstory, it starts informing what's happening in the present of the film. And
absolutely. Yeah.
and that's the other part to me that's impressive about this film, is that there's a lot of movies, like remember when we were talking about Bird Box that randomly jumps around
Yes.
like chronologically, like for no reason. And like I think it's in a pitch meeting video where he's, the writer of this is like pitching it to the producer, like the pitch meeting videos on Screen Rant, and he's just like, like, I don't know, isn't that what some movies do where they jump around? Yeah. Oh, we should do that. Why not? Like that's how much thought went into Bird Box of like why they
Yeah.
should jump around. And this film, then you're like, absolutely, it needs to have the back and forth, because she's going through all of this stuff as she's reflecting on what this means to her, that she's now reflecting back on this. And you can see in such brilliant ways of, for example, when she gets to the hotel, then there's pears in the fruit basket, and then she throws them out the window off the balcony into the pool, right?
Yeah.
And then you're just like, what is wrong with her? Like, what a spoiled, bratty woman who, like literally, like what a prima donna. She can't have pears in her room, and she's fairly like broke at this point. And you're just like, get over yourself. How can you be offended by pears being in the room? That's something that like some big pop star would do, but who are
Right.
you? And then you realize as you watch the film, you're like, oh, so then I judged her early, and then I realized that I was casting all of these judgments on her that were really unfair. Eh,
Absolutely.
which
Yeah.
is like, that's where that punch, that emotional punch of this film comes from.
Yeah. No. You are absolutely right. It really is, so fascinating to watch this story. You and I think both are probably like the perfect audience for this film. Even though we do have differing opinions on Mary Poppins,
Yeah.
then we're the perfect audience because we love films and
Mm,
filmmaking and all that behind the scenes stuff.
yeah.
And then we're also both writers,
Yep.
even though I'm not a published author
But
yet.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but
You're
but
still a
yeah,
writer. I mean, like every writer
yeah.
begins unpublished.
Right. Yeah. So it's and so it's really interesting seeing it from both perspectives, where you're watching the author and being like, well, yeah, I can absolutely, like I can sympathize with her being like, these are my characters, they need to stay how I originally wrote them, you're ruining them. And then you can also see Disney's point of view of like, we're trying to make a movie, not, we're not doing the books. Things need to be changed and adjusted as we go. It's not going to be, word for word what the book is, and this art of adaptation. So it's really, really fascinating. And she doesn't understand the movie business,
Right.
and and I mean, you have those fun scenes where she's like, int, what does this mean? Int, it means
Right.
interior. Well, it's not correct.
Exactly. I know. Yeah, there's all those really fun things of her being condescending. Like she's so condescending to like I mean literally like when you see Walt come out, then like first appearance of him, he comes out of his office and he stands there and then right behind him is just a wall of Academy Awards. I'm not kidding. And it's like I watch that and I was like just seeing them and like, right, yeah, like I don't know how you're not blown away by that. And she could not think less of him. It is hilarious. And I don't know. And I mean what she's standing up for with her book, with the rights to it, to me, on I can get why an author is defensive of their work. I absolutely get that. But she's standing up for such trivial things, trivial
Absolutely.
aspects of her work. And like I literally I just turned to Judith partway through and I'm just like, I would sell the rights to my debut novel to Disney for literally that bowl of pears. Like I don't care. Just you're going to make my book into a movie, you can have it for free. I'm going to get so many sales from there being a film. I don't care about the cost of the film rights. And if a producer's ever watching this, I care very much about the film rights. Think 7 figures easily. I take it all back.
Yeah, no, I do. I I do agree that, yeah, like especially in this day and age where adaptations of novels or any kind of story into film, it does wonders for you economically if you are the
Yeah.
author of that original story. There's no doubt about that. But I think that she did have such a low opinion of Walt Disney and of animation. She was like, it's not going to be an animation. And, when she's upset about like the penguins, she's like, so how are you going to train the penguins to dance? And it's like, oh, well, that's animation. What? I said no animation.
Right. Yeah, that's the thing that just, you know, that's the last straw for her is just even just having a sequence with
Right.
some elements of animation, still live action.
Yeah.
Um, and that's why she leaves. But and you get though in the backstory, then you understand why she's so opposed to selling the rights and to Disney in general. Like she calls, I forget exactly the phrase that she uses, but when she's describing Disneyland, then she calls it like, like a like a money printing machine or something like
Mhm.
that. That like, you know, that cash printing machine you have of like Disneyland, right? That she's so
Right.
appalled by the fact that it is just so financially, like so economically successful. Um,
Yes. Yeah.
that and then you understand why, because then you see her dad who teaches her this, and that her dad who struggles so much, obviously with alcoholism, and then ultimately trying to maintain his position in a bank.
Hmm.
And you can see that he's saying, like, look, they've got their priorities all wrong, and they want you to be a certain way, and you can't give in to them. And it's so interesting because she both takes her father's advice and doesn't take her father's advice.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's very true. And I'm glad that you brought up the alcoholism. I'd like to rephrase it as addiction because I think that that plays an important role when she sees Walt Disney smoking and realizes that he also suffers from an addiction. And I think that there's just like a little bit of a connection there that she sort of makes where she's like, oh. everybody, even the successful people, can struggle with these things. And I don't
Mm,
know, I feel like there's something there, and I would
yeah.
need to like watch the film again to really pick up on that. But
That's an interesting point. That's really interesting. Um, yeah. Now, the way and sorry, just to finish my point about
yeah,
her
yeah,
dad. So she takes his advice in the sense that she's basically hostile to money, to anything that has to do with doing something for commercial gain.
right, yeah, yeah,
But at the same time, she becomes this uptight, unfun, just, like sucking on a lemon kind of figure. And it's like, that's not who her father taught her to be. And so I'm saying
yeah,
that she takes his advice, but she doesn't take it. She takes it like he's like, don't don't believe them about money, and like that this world of imagination is so important. And she's like, okay, I accept the part about being hostile to money and people who've got that um profit incentive in everything they do, but
yeah,
I'm not taking your advice about living in the world of imagination, because she does do this as an author, but she herself doesn't
right.
have any sense of whimsy or fun.
Yeah, yeah. It is something that she, in the film clearly struggles with, that she does not want to, and like when Walt Disney like takes her to Disneyland, the happiest place on earth, he's
Right.
like, yeah, we're just gonna have a day of fun, and she
Right.
doesn't want any of it, you know?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
she's very resistant to that idea, because she has in her mind somehow like connected uh, this idea of fun and entertainment with commercial gains,
Yeah.
and and so she kind of doesn't want a part of either. She doesn't want to sell the film rights, and the only reason why she's considering it is because she's, like out of money.
That's right.
um,
But she seems
and
to resent that, right? Like because she's, for somebody who did not grow up aristocratic, she's such an aristocrat. She
mhm,
doesn't want to know where her money comes from, right? She's like,
right,
she's above such things that,
yeah,
I can't be bothered to know about this. Like she's so entitled, but she has no business being entitled. And
yeah,
like, because she didn't have that childhood. And then
yeah.
even as an author, then it's like, okay, yeah, maybe you made a bunch of money from the book, but the money's run out. Like, I don't know why you think you deserve money from nothing. Like, you are not an aristocrat. You are not living off of the wealth that comes from owning all of this land and having a title.
Hmm.
Like, you actually have to work for your money,
Yeah.
like the rest of us.
Yeah.
Eh, but she wants to be above that.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. She is a fascinating character in the film, and obviously there has to be some level of, poetic license with all of this, and we
I'm
don't know,
sure.
how the author actually was, but in terms of the film, then we can say that, yeah, like all
treating
these things about the
treating it
Altrex.
as inspired from true events from real life, but it's a
Mhm.
film, and so therefore she's a character within the film, because this is not a
Right.
documentary, that it is a
Yeah.
dramatization. And so of course, yeah, there is artistic license being taken, I'm sure, but who knows where and when and to what degree, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and um but this is, so you've got this character who is just in many ways, I think, could be seen as just being too unlikable to be a protagonist. Um,
Yep.
and yet at the same time, she is fun. She is likable. And
Yes.
at this end, ultimately, though, seeing her find a sense of healing through this process, and
Mhm.
seeing her uh, becoming free as she explores what this book means to her, and her relationship to her father, that redeeming somebody who seems irredeemable, like unredeemable.
Yeah.
And it's that's such a really, really great theme. And I think that's a theme that so rarely gets explored. And I think less and less, because you look at the way um, I feel like society, and this is my like social commentary, but society is so um, judgmental if somebody does something wrong, and the level of forgiveness is disappearing to almost nothing. That if
Yeah.
anybody makes a mistake at any point in their life, then and then that mistake then becomes public, like it gets revealed, then people will turn on that figure so quickly. And it's just like, oh, forget that person, they did this, at that point in their life, or they just did this awful thing, or they suffer from this. And
Yeah.
people become so hostile. But this film is exploring a whole bunch of characters like that and saying, is she perfect? No, but she has value, and we should be patient with her because she's broken and she's gone through a lot of really, really tough stuff, a lot of really heavy stuff. And when you understand why she is the way she is, then you become so much more sympathetic to her treatment of other people, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. It really is an incredible film. Emma Thompson does a fantastic job in this role. Like
Yeah,
truly brilliant. Like
yeah,
because yeah, she is a character that we want to like,
yeah,
and that we struggle to like throughout the film, where we're constantly looking at her and we're just going like, why can't you just give the rights to Disney already? Like,
yeah.
we want there to be that level of satisfaction. Like, it seems like it's good for you, it's good for Disney,
Right.
it's good
Like
for
you want
everybody,
to
and
see her be happy, right?
yeah,
She's
yeah,
so unhappy, and you
yeah,
want to see her enjoying this process, because I think that's really like, for me as an author, when I look at this, that I'm just like, you are having like what for so many authors would be the dream
yeah,
happening, to see your work come to life, and come to life because it's beloved by the
right,
producer, right? And
yeah,
everybody behind it, and that they really, really believe in it, and they want to do justice to it. They're not doing it just to make money, but they're doing it because they absolutely adore what you've done.
yeah,
And and out of that you get so much um emotional resonance, like when you see it, it's actually a really incredible thing. I think like it's more inspiring than what you get, and I hate to pick on the MCU, but it's more inspiring than what you get in basically any Marvel film. And
yeah,
this is the little part when they're singing um the song "Let's Go Fly a Kite," and she realizes that they're trying that it's about redeeming Mr. Banks. It's ultimately about saving him, saving the father, and that's what the film is about. And that at the end of it, when he fixes it, and then he takes them out there to go and do this, and then you watch her foot just starting like that, right? And
yes,
then her feet like doing like this little dance, that
yeah,
it's like you're like, wow, wow, right? And it's so inspiring. It's and then when she gets up and she's actually dancing around, then you're like, it's so it's so moving, because you understand that it's not just that she's finding healing in her life at this point, that she's really getting this healing through this process, but she's finding
yeah,
happiness as well. And she feels like through her fiction and through making this film, even though her father has been gone for a very long time, that she's able to ultimately save him. That she couldn't when she was a child because she just didn't know how, but she
right,
knows how to now. And
yeah.
it's just like, wow.
Absolutely. It is just an absolutely incredible journey
Yeah.
that we're able to witness. And yeah, like it really is, like moments like that, then they they really let you know that she's finding reasons to dislike the film being made, but she's not actually upset at these things. She's, just picking out like the little things
Yeah.
that irk her, when overall she's not able to see the big picture of this is ultimately, like, if you look at the whole story, then it is about Mr. Banks, and it is about, you know, redeeming him and ultimately her father as well. Yeah, and I mean, honestly, like that scene in the movie theater where, she's crying, and Walt like leans forward and he's like, it's all right, he'll come around. And then she's just like, I just can't stand animation. Then you
Yeah.
get, like, you're just like, ah, like, she's still like holding on to a little bit of that. She can't admit, that, and yeah, it's so incredible to see that, because it's very real. It's very human.
Yeah.
And it's something that we don't get to see. And I was going to bring up the MCU if you didn't, because getting back to the point before about, like, she is uh she is an unlikable character at the beginning, and she ultimately like redeems herself. She, and the film does a good job of redeeming Mr. Banks, and like all this idea of redeeming a fallen character, it doesn't work if the character isn't broken to begin with.
Yeah.
And that is what the vast majority of MCU films seem to fail to realize, is that, yeah, you can give them, like these little things that aren't, good about them. But the reason why we loved Tony Stark in the first Iron Man was because he was fully ingrained in this war economy,
Yeah.
in just like this business of selling guns and weaponry, and he didn't care. He didn't
Right.
care, about what was happening with those weapons. And then seeing him come around is is very, moving for us in a less, no, definitely not to the same degree as anything in this film, but it is more than any other MCU film, I would say. All the other MCU films, and it's just like, oh, okay, we have this character who has these little imperfections, but ultimately they're still more or less perfect. And
Yeah.
so when you start out the film liking the character, and you end the film liking the character, and it's like, well, there was no like real emotional growth that
Right.
that that I was able to go through. And Iron Man is the only film that really does a great job of that. And this film, Saving Mr. Banks, does an incredible job of doing that, time and time again with all these different characters, where you've got, yeah, like, well, everybody in this film is,
Yeah.
ultimately broken at the beginning in some way. It's not just they have imperfections. It is that they are broken.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah. Um, and I mean the other MCU film that tries to do this, that approaches it but doesn't get there, is Doctor Strange.
yeah,
Um, because he's unlikable and then he becomes physically broken, and then this becomes like an
right,
intellectual issue for him and a spiritual issue. But ultimately, I mean, and this is, to me, like, it's the limitations of the superhero genre. I'm not saying that it's impossible within the superhero genre, but really there's not much patience for, they don't believe that viewers have much patience.
yeah,
There's just nothing behind that. Like, this film is like, she's going to be unlikable for about an hour and 45 minutes.
right,
Right? Like, that's why I'm
yeah,
saying that this film is really brave. And the other thing that I find that is so brave about this is the way, like, her father, uh, as a character where you've got oh, what's his name? Colin. I can never. What's his last name?
Colin Firth?
No,
No, it's,
that's
uh,
terrible. Colin Farrell.
yeah, okay.
Yeah, Colin Farrell, who plays her father.
Right.
That the the great the thing that to me is so impressive is that the film doesn't try to fix him to show why it's okay for her to love him.
Right. Yeah.
It allows him to be broken and to ultimately not get better, but still be a great father and a loving father who just had some serious issues. And same thing with her mother. Her mother's really broken, and it allows her mother to be broken without ever actually redeeming her or fixing her. And then you get that with, and it really hits home when you have Tom Hanks as Walt Disney, who describes his father, and he says, you know, he explains why he did poorly in school, which actually like explains like how PL Travers, she judged him. She's like, she tries to diagnose him. She's like, you're this and you're this and you're this. And then he's like, oh, I didn't do well in school. And here's why. Because my father had this struggling
Yeah.
newspaper, you know, that he was running. And then I had to do the morning edition and the evening edition, and doing that in the winter and all of that. And I couldn't focus in school as a result. And that, you know, his dad beat him. And the thing is, and then he immediately says, don't get me wrong, like I loved my father and he was a great man. Like,
Yeah.
show me a film. I cannot believe that that actually like was written and produced and actually released, no, regardless of studio. And then we also go, that was a Disney movie that just said, wait, you just said that the guy abused his son and physically and really by doing like it's certainly physical abuse, both with like,
Mm.
you know, actually hitting him and then getting him to do the paper
Yeah.
route and all of that, and
Yeah.
it's educational neglect and all of those things. And then he's allowing his father to be imperfect and then to say he was a great man and I loved him without apologizing for all of that and without trying to excuse the behavior. And then you get that within the film where you've got Mary Poppins who is defending Mr. Banks, who says like, you know, I forget exactly how she puts it, but basically like, oh, like, you know, don't be mad at your father. Like some people or some adults or something along those lines, they can't see past the end of their nose, right? And it's
Right.
just like, hey, it it's your job. It's not even your job. Just you don't have to wait for your parent to be perfect to love them. And
Right.
you don't have to wait for them to be perfect to to really appreciate who they are and to appreciate the role that they're playing in your life. And that's what I'm trying to say, like with the social commentary of people attribute every awful thing to a person because they make a mistake or because they have an addiction, they make a bad choice, or maybe even a series of bad choices, instead of saying, yes, they're that, but they're that too,
Yeah.
right? Yes, they might have done that and they might have struggled with that, or maybe they're still struggling with that, but that's not all they are. And if we just label people and just say, you know, addict or abuser or this, that, or whatever else, then the thing is ultimately no one gets healing. You have resentment
Yeah.
on the part of the victim, and then you've got the person who knows that they're never going to be forgiven, that no one gets redeemed out of that. Ultimately, everyone suffers, which is what makes this movie such an amazing Disney movie, in that this
Hmm.
is actually insisting on the importance of family and the relationship between a parent and child, and showing how important the structure of the family is, even if you don't have a perfect parent or even an incredibly flawed parent, that
Right.
that's still something to be valued and cherished.
Yeah. Oh man, that was a beautiful speech.
Thanks.
And yeah, no, you are 100% correct that it is something where, you know, it's the idea of unconditional love,
Yeah.
and it's something that is, harder and harder to see in today's world. And this film, again, unapologetically addresses this with,
Yeah.
again, with several characters, with just saying, like, yeah, no, they, like certainly with Walt and his father, and with P.L. Travers and her father, where you have both of them being like, well, yeah, my father was not a good person, and I wish that there could be this. I wish that there could have been this magical presence that comes in and makes everything better, and
Mhm.
then leaves when it's done. The fact that that is not reality, and yet it is this idea of, just this hope, this desire in every kid, and that's why Walt Disney wants to make the film, because he's like, this is about family
Yeah.
coming together. It's
Yeah.
not about, you know, kids having a really fun adventure, which they do.
Yeah.
But I mean, we can expand this out even further to say that this is, a statement about uh, what Walt Disney himself stood for, and even what the studio strives for now, which is, you know, Disneyland, happiest place on earth. Like, Walt Disney started it for his workers. That
Yeah.
was where the original idea came. He was like, I want you on your days off to be able to spend time with your family.
Yeah.
And then when he realized, like, oh, I can I can help families all over to come and just have a day where they forget about the rest of the world, where it's completely isolated. It's just in this world of pure imagination and fantasy, and you know tomorrow, and all the different lands uh, that he put up. And yeah, it's fascinating to see that the film does this in such a profound way, that it's not ham-fisted. It's not,
No.
you know, like, it is unapologetic about it, but it is not serving it up on a platter. It's not
Nope.
saying, okay, here you go, this is the meaning. It's not trying
It's
to
a subtle
summarize
film.
it. It is
And that's the
absolutely.
other thing that I think is so great about this, and that's why I'm also surprised that it's a Disney film. And this is not to be disparaging to Disney, but I'm just saying this is not a kids movie. Like,
Right.
that's what I
Yeah.
said as soon as I finished watching it to Judith. And I couldn't I could not be more impressed by the film. I'm just like, that is so not for kids, and not in a bad way. Not in like, oh, like, don't show this to your kids. It's like they could watch it, but there's no way it's hitting home the way it
Yeah.
will for adults, especially if you're an adult with, enough life experience and you've seen enough things. You've had a certain amount of tragedy in your life that you watch this, and it's just like the movie floored me by the
Mhm.
emotional depth of it, because it is subtle,
Yeah.
that it is uh, slowly revealing these things about her. And
Yeah.
you have to make the connections, just as you're on the same journey as her, where she's slowly making these connections as she's watching it. And it's like, he's already gone, he's already died, so what difference does it make with this film? And then you're like, but it does make a difference, as she starts to realize that,
Yeah.
that, yeah, she dropped the pears when she was a kid, and she wasn't able to help her dad, she wasn't able to get there quickly enough. But the thing is that it doesn't end there, because she's still his daughter, she's still uh, working through these things, and it doesn't matter how long it takes until she gets to a place of peace. The important thing is that she does, and she
Yeah.
has a richer life because of her dad's presence in it, and not a poorer life because of the struggles that he had. Right? It's
Yeah. Yeah.
It's yeah, there's so much that it's hard to even put it into words because the effect of the film is so it's so well done. It's so
Yes.
well
Yeah.
executed.
Absolutely. It really is incredible. The film is it's in many ways it's a tragedy. You know, you're witnessing like a tragedy happen in the
Yeah.
past, and it's and it is, you know, these very tough, serious, emotional issues that are being worked through by these characters, again, on a very subtle level. And I feel like the film still has fun.
Yeah.
it's
Yeah, it
it's
does.
shocking because there are, you know, these little jokes here and there. There are these fun moments where you get caught up in the songs, or
Yeah,
you know, and along with PL Travers getting caught
right.
up in the song, um, and you are, you know, you're laughing, you're smiling, you are, you know, potentially crying, and you know, you are saddened, but it goes through so many different emotions, and yeah, it does it so brilliantly that it doesn't feel disjointed or, you
No.
know, or mixed. It's very, very well done because the jokes are subtle in as much as the tragedy is subtle. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's
Yeah, I do. Well, and because it's all flowing in a fairly organic way, that
yeah.
it doesn't feel like, oh, they needed to have a joke in there because it was too serious for too long. And it's like, we need insert joke here, or, comedic banter here, and now profound scene here. It does not feel formulaic. It doesn't feel clunky. Everything works so well together.
Mhm.
People will talk about, I personally I hate this in film criticism when people will talk about the beats. Oh, the beats are all there within a film. I'm like, F you. Oh my goodness. Like, that's not how, like literally, like, is that how you think like paintings are done? Just like literally just get a template and put it over there and just do a paint by numbers. And it's just like, well, it's got all the elements of a good painting. It's like, that's not how a movie works. That's not how a story works. It's just that
Yeah.
so many good ones happen to do similar things at similar points in the film, but you're approaching it from the complete wrong way around. And the language, the framing of it by saying that the beats are there, that it's like, no, it's that if it's well done, then very likely you will find those elements to the film. But if you start by just literally having dramatic scene, comedic banter, like comedic relief here, like all of that stuff, like,
Yeah.
backstory, like if you try to write it that way, it's going to feel ham-fisted.
Yeah, yeah. I think a lot of the strengths of this story do come from the history, the actual records that they are basing this off of. I love the fact that they during the credits, and they actually show the tape recorder. You know, they
Yeah,
actually play the tape recorder, and you go, oh yeah, this is all real. Like it's
right.
again, there is for sure some poetic license, but you do hear that and you go, oh, this is based on like real, real, like real things, not just
Yeah,
real in the sense of, yeah, it actually happened, but even real in terms of, you know, the emotions behind
that's
it,
right.
that those were
That's right.
genuine.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's such a good film. I'm so glad
Yeah.
that you did watch it.
Me
Um,
too. Yeah, it's one of those films where I'm just like, I am so glad I watched this.
yeah.
And
I mean,
I'm
I personally, I have an admiration for studying Walt Disney's life. I think that he's a fascinating person uh, to study his story, um, and of course, you know, it stars Tom Hanks, who is
yeah,
just incredible
yeah,
in everything, as we
yeah,
discussed before.
yep,
And you know, he almost turned down this role He said, "I don't look anything like Walt Disney. Why would you cast me?" And they said, "No, we know that you can do it."
Right.
And I think that's for one thing. I feel like any other actor who is approached and is like, "Do you want to play Walt Disney?" They'd be like, "For sure. How could I
Right.
say no?"
Yeah.
Tom Hanks, he actually did have a moment of like, I don't know that this is going to work. And he does a fantastic job with the mannerisms and everything about his performance is incredible as well. Yeah, and the other thing that I think is really brave about this film, and basically my feeling when leaving this film was, it feels like a film that would be shown at Sundance or
Yep.
South by Southwest or something
Yep.
like that. It feels like an independent film, but with a
It's
bigger
a
budget.
character study. Yeah.
Yes, and it's absolutely incredible, absolutely amazing that Disney did make this film. No other studio could make this film. Like,
Right.
you know,
That's a good point. Yeah.
like, anybody could take this script and go to any other studio, and it's like, it takes place in Disneyland. It features Walt Disney. There's
Yeah.
we can't do
That's right.
that. Even an independent filmmaker would, probably get sued by Disney, to be quite frank,
Yeah.
for libel or whatever.
Right.
Or slander, and the film is able to do these things because it is produced by Disney. They have the rights to everything related to Walt Disney's life, and they didn't have to have that whole sequence in Disneyland. It's a beautiful scene in the film. I think that it works really, really well. Again, like I described before, of her being in this world of, like, oh, everything's oversaturated, and it's all a cartoon, and I don't want to be here, and it works really, really well seeing somebody not enjoying themselves in Disneyland,
Is
which
there
is
anything funnier than that?
right.
I mean, like,
You're
that's
just
literally like one of the dwarves, Grumpy. It's just like, this
yeah.
is so fun having a grumpy person in a place where you're not supposed to be grumpy. That's actually
Yeah,
very fun.
yeah, absolutely. The risks that Walt Disney Studios was taking by
Yeah.
producing this film is incredible. You're showing
Yeah.
somebody being miserable in
Right.
what you call the happiest place on earth.
That's right.
You show Walt Disney smoking,
Yep.
which, I mean, he didn't want anybody to know at the time. Obviously, like, it's common knowledge now that he did, but he was very protective of that. And I don't personally, I don't think that he would have approved with that being in this film. But
That's funny.
it's
Yeah.
but I think that it is important that we see that he is struggling with several things himself. That it's not all sunshine and roses for him, despite the appearance that he puts on.
Yeah.
Um, it's fascinating because the film it shows an imperfect Walt Disney, a character not enjoying Disneyland. It
Yep.
shows somebody who doesn't want to work with Disney,
Yeah.
who did
Somebody who,
not like Walt Disney as the
right.
main character,
Right.
who did
Who's
not like any
hostile
of
to
the
all things
decisions. Yeah.
Disney. Um,
She did not like any aspect of this film being made. None of
right.
it.
That's right. Yeah.
The entire process. And the only way and she had it as a stipulation that she had to be there as part of the creative, process. And it was ultimately only when Walt Disney was able to convince her, I know what your story is really about. That's the only time where she was able to say, okay, you can have it. I don't need to sign off on it. Just do what you're going to do. And she
Yeah.
still wasn't happy with it. Right. And again, like this film is brave, it's bold in these choices to tell this story. it's wonderful.
It is wonderful because it's not trying to fix every person who has a problem.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
just like, yeah,
The
like we all
even the
have,
Sherman brothers are dealing with stuff, you know,
yeah.
yeah, it is the Sherman brothers, correct?
I'm
And
not sure.
at least one of them I think is Sherman. I think that might be BJ Novak's character. Um, but yeah, there are so many things in this film that make it feel like it's an independent film with a bigger budget being done by a major studio in ways that are not flattering to itself, to
Right.
its history, um, and being unapologetically very emotional, very challenging in its storytelling, in
Yeah.
its theme, in its tone, and everything about this film is risky, and I
It
love
is.
it.
I know that's the, yeah, me too. Because like I say, it's um I think especially when I saw it, because like I say, I got feedback from somebody in publishing about a manuscript that I have, and I'm like, I didn't do anything nearly as risky as what this film did, and it's just like, your
Yeah,
protagonist can't do that. That makes him unlikable. And then I'm like,
yeah,
as if you work in publishing, but like that is the issue for writers all the time, for filmmakers, is that you want to do something and then you've got some dunderheaded executive, whether it's a producer, or you've got, like, basically you've got a whole bunch of cowards. You've got a whole bunch of cowards who don't trust readers and they don't trust viewers. They think that everybody is so sensitive and they are terrified to take on anything that is even remotely challenging, that's even remotely controversial. I mean, because the happiest times of her life are, the greatest person she knows is her alcoholic father who is killing himself because of, through this addiction, who is struggling so desperately financially. And then she, like, literally, can't bear to see her father go through this. She goes and gets him booze. She finds his stash. He, drinks this. Is like, her mother is so upset that her mother then goes and tries to kill herself. And then this little child goes and saves her mother from taking her own life. And then you get a nanny who comes in to try to deal with her father who's dying and her mother who just emotionally cannot continue. And it's like,
yeah.
happiest times of her life. Come on.
Yeah,
Come on. That, like,
yeah,
that's what happened. And
yeah,
I'm just
yeah.
like, and
Again,
that's a,
it is a genuine story. It is a true story
yeah,
in the most literal sense.
yeah,
Not in as in, yes, these are the facts of what happened, but
right.
in these are the emotions
That's
that
right.
went on with her upbringing. That every child, like I mean, yes, this is one very, very touching story, um, but it speaks volumes to the relationships that we have with our families. I mean, the way that Walt Disney is able to relate this to his father. It's not the exact same story. His
No.
father, he doesn't say if his father struggled with alcoholism or anything, but he says, like, yeah, my father was not a perfect man, but I loved him.
Uh-huh.
And that is something that every child feels. Every single child
Yeah.
feels some level. And I mean, at some point, that love may die. I'm not saying that you are guaranteed to unconditionally love your parents forever. That's the case for everybody. No. But that as a child, you love your parents, that
Yeah.
you do. There is nothing as a child that can break that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's it. Um, I want to talk about just a couple other things.
Yeah.
So Paul Giamatti plays the chauffeur, Gail
Yes.
Travers's chauffeur, and she says before she leaves, like she leaves and she comes back for the movie premiere, right? And then she gets to see him again. Uh, but she says that he is the only American that she's ever liked. Right?
Yeah.
And I want to know what you make of that and why, because I've got some theories on it that I'm working through, but I want to know. I know it's been a little bit since you've seen the movie, but
Yeah, it has been quite a while. Hmm. I think it's that he at least at that point in the film, he seems to be the only American that she has met who is doing things for his children. Uh,
hmm,
you know,
that's interesting.
because he's like trying to get the autograph, right? Like
Yeah.
throughout the whole film, and I think that she's sort of, maybe because I don't remember exactly, but maybe she's, even just interpreting that he's working this job as just a chauffeur,
Yeah.
or whatever, because he's trying to give his daughter the best. And the fact that he reads the story to his daughter and that, they read it together. And I think that that's really what makes her feel like, oh, okay, yes, I do like you, even though she doesn't. She's not, she's not the friendliest toward him,
No.
uh, but she does like him. That
Yeah.
she knows that he's a good father.
Yeah. But even in that, the film is subtle and patient, because
Yes.
it takes a while to even get to the part, like, because when he first meets her, then he's like, oh, like a sunny day, like just for you, the sun came out just for you, and then he says this again to her, right? And then it's really late in the film when he tells her that his daughter is physically disabled, that he says that she's handicapped, and then he's like, and that's why I pay so much attention to the weather, and that's why I'm so grateful for sunny days, is
Uh,
because otherwise she's cooped up inside. uh, so he finally brings this out and tells her this. And then, she's very sympathetic to the idea that his daughter has got this disability. And then, she makes a list of names of all these successful people, like including like Franklin Delano Roosevelt. That's the one that I really remember. Einstein as well, saying like, hey, just because your daughter has limitations doesn't mean that she can't be incredibly successful, right?
right.
That,
Yeah.
uh, but in terms of like, so I know, I'm sure that's an aspect of it, that he is a good father, and that she recognizes that. I think the other thing is that he he crosses the he is crossing boundaries, personal boundaries that she set up for herself, but he's doing it to be polite and to be friendly. And
Mm.
um, so basically, British people have got, traditionally speaking, they're stereotypically known as being very reserved and uptight with a lot of boundaries. That there's a lot of
Yeah.
things that they just don't want to share. That things that you would not think are personal are very personal,
Right.
right?
They are very emotionally withheld.
Yeah,
Um, yeah.
exactly. And Americans are stereotypically contrasted as being very brash, very outspoken, very loud,
Yeah.
um, and that there's far, like, just very different from British people.
Mhm.
And he is not exactly a rude, brash American who's very loud, but he also doesn't really respect the boundaries that she has, that
Yeah.
he continues asking her personal questions, because he genuinely cares for her and wants to know her, because they are interacting with each other. That,
Yeah.
do you know what I mean? It's like, well,
Yeah.
like I'm
He,
driving you around, and so like I do care about you because however we've met, and therefore I should care about you. And he even comes and
Yeah.
sits beside her on the grass when she's like thinking back to her father and like building these little like imaginary things with like the sticks and the leaves and all of that. And he just sits down beside her and he kind of like meets her where she is. And it's like, you could look at that and just be like, oh, she's going through stuff. Give her space. He won't give her
Right.
space. But
Yeah.
he's not being invasive or intrusive. Like he's not doing it in a rude way. Like he is
Right.
not
Yeah.
thinking that he's being impolite, but
Mhm.
he's definitely crossing those boundaries that she
Yeah.
has.
Yeah.
And I think that she kind of likes that, right?
Mhm.
That
Yeah.
she likes the fact that he is getting a little bit closer than she is allowing. Um,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
that everybody else in the film tries to do this, but she questions their motives for doing it, right? That
Right. Yeah.
everybody else, like they want to call her by her first name, and certainly then you get that with Disney all the time with Walt. Then
Yeah.
he just completely ignores the fact that she wants to be known as Mrs. Travers. Just
Right.
disregards that entirely and just keeps calling not even Pamela, he's just Pam, right? That it's like
Yes.
it's
Yeah.
and that everybody else like that comes up very early on of like, oh no, we're on a first name basis here, and she's like, well, not me. you
Yeah.
know
Yeah. Sorry, this is a side note, but I love that they included that. It's something that I know is true in the Disney parks that absolutely everybody goes by their first name. It does not matter if they're, your superior or whatever. And it's something that a lot of other amusement parks have picked up on. Of course, I am a theme park nut, uh, but even I would say it's even had a profound impact on society as a whole, in that a lot of businesses, then it's not, you don't refer to the owner or your manager as Mr. or Mrs. whatever or Ms. whatever. It has become on a first name basis is the general rule. Uh, it's a wild change, and it's something that I feel, Walt Disney really pioneered. Not to
it,
say that he was absolutely the first, but that,
no
yeah.
no that is interesting. And I can say, so I've got a slightly different perspective on this, that i'm I don't know, I'm pretty sure that I'm at this point in my life because I've been a teacher for so long. I think I may have, maybe I've been called Mr. Knapp more than I've been called Nathan at this point in my life. That I've heard that because when you're in a classroom, it is not uncommon for somebody to say your name like Mr. Knapp. I would say within an hour, sometimes 30 to 40 times, right? And how
Right.
many times do
Yeah.
people legitimately say your first name? And so, because I've been doing it for a number of years now, like year 11 or 12 or something like that, I have heard it so many times that there is a certain level of intimacy that is involved in using my first name that
Mhm.
actually, like, I am
Yeah.
uncomfortable if people, like, certainly if I had a student who doesn't call me Mr. Knapp, it's like, whoa, you have crossed a serious boundary. Like, it
Yeah.
is not Nathan, it is not Knapp, it is Mr. Knapp. And there is a
Right.
boundary that exists here, and you do not cross that boundary. So it's like when she's insisting on that, I'm like, oh, I get that, right?
Yeah.
That you develop that boundary, and you're just like, people don't cross this. And
Right.
then when people do, you're like, whoa, this is way too close. And
Yeah.
so it's interesting because you have all these other characters who are constantly crossing these boundaries that she's set up, that she's established, but she keeps looking at them and questioning their motives, saying, well, you're doing it because you want me to sell the rights, you want me to sign off on
Mm.
this, you want me to give the okay. But Ralph
Yeah.
is doing it because he just genuinely seems to care for her. He just genuinely
Yeah.
wants to know if she's okay. And I think that's why she says, you're the only American I've ever liked, because you're the only American who is an American but doesn't seem to have that profit motive.
Right.
That
Yeah.
she's just, that's not even in his head. He doesn't seem to
Yeah.
be doing it for a tip, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
you
No,
even get that fun little
absolutely.
scene like where like the bellhop brings her bags up, and then like he opens the door and then she picks them up and walks in, and then he's just like, oh, okay. And like she doesn't give him a tip. It's like, I'm not
Right.
like, that's how opposed to money she is. And so she doesn't like it when she feels like somebody's doing something for the profit incentive.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah, it really has been too long since I last watched this film.
So
Because I remembered the show for, and I remembered, quite a bit about his interactions with PL Travers, but I didn't actually I didn't remember his name, and I didn't even remember uh, that his daughter had a physical disability. That's how long it's been. Because, um, but but yeah, no, it's that's really interesting, and I agree that yeah, I can totally understand that it is an uncomfortable moment for Miss Travers to be called by her first name and all that. Um, but yeah, it just is interesting that to me, like at this point, uh, like the first time that I was called sir, for example, that was a weird moment for me, and I
oh
felt
yeah,
kind of
it can be
uncomfortable.
really,
And
yeah, it can make you uncomfortable. And that's what I'm trying to say is that
yeah,
whatever you have, you can get
yeah,
accustomed to something, and that she has become accustomed to being Mrs. Travers, and
right,
that they just don't care.
yeah,
Right? And it's just like, no, we are going to be this intimate with you because it is for her a level of intimacy. Like they don't see it as that, but it's like, we're
yeah,
not going to be that distant from you. Like,
right, yeah,
and
it,
and it's Disney. Like, where this entire thing is like about singing and dancing and like whimsy, these fun, like imaginary characters that were, you're living in the land of imagination. So you don't get to be stuffy here, right?
right,
That's
yeah,
basically the point. And she's
yeah,
like, no, I can be stuffy wherever I go. And they
yes,
just won't let her. It's
yes,
a
yeah.
fun dynamic.
Again, that's why that film of her in Disneyland is so much fun.
It's terrific.
And yeah, that's actually the last point that I really wanted to bring up. I love the joke that Walt makes about while they're in Disneyland, where he says like, "Oh yeah, and I know exactly how many leaves are on each tree or whatever." And I was I didn't even catch it like when I first saw the film, but I was looking at it later and it was like, oh, that's a reference to the Tree of Life at Animal
Right.
Kingdom,
Right.
where they literally like created this tree with with a
Yeah.
specific number of leaves and
And that the tree has more flowers than leaves. That's
right.
yeah. And
Yeah.
there's a really fun reference because this is like I've got two other things. So it's this and one other thing that I wanted
Mhm.
to mention. So at the end of the film, the premiere of it, then you see Walt's office again, and then I think she's there. I think it's Travers who's there in his office, and he walks in, and so this is now 1964, and I'm just assuming from this that like when was Walt Disney World built? Or like
Oh yes, I know what you're referring to. I feel like it probably opened in like 67,
yeah, that's what
60,
I was
yeah,
thinking.
like around there,
Yeah, that you see he's got a map of Florida on there,
yeah.
and
Yeah,
he's got this whole section around Orlando, right? Around like the
yes.
Kissimmee, Orlando area that it's all highlighted on there, but it's really subtle. Like it's just in the
Yeah.
corner.
Yeah.
And then I was just like, ah, like there it is, right? He's got his
Yeah.
like plans of like he's buying up all the property and developing it, and
Yeah, which, by the way, was a really interesting story. At this point, then, Walt Disney had, reached this level of fame where if anybody knew that he was interested in doing something, then they would jack up the price. So he actually
exactly.
bought all those different plots of land in Florida under a bunch of different company names. Like,
Right. And doesn't that like it's that's not just like a random little you know, Easter egg in the film. Like it's not it actually connects very well to the theme that
hmm,
who would sell their stuff to Disney? right?
Right.
That
Yeah.
it's like it's people who legitimately would not want to sell their land to Disney, or they're going to play
Yeah.
really, really hard to get. And it's like, that's what the
Yeah.
whole movie was about. How
Yeah, that's
amazing is
true.
that? I'm looking at that going, oh,
Wow.
like,
Yeah.
whoa. That's why I'm like,
That
this
is
movie is
incredible.
so brilliant.
Yeah, it
Um,
really is.
so the last thing I wanted to mention is I was looking up the director of this, and so I don't know if you're familiar with, like, if you already knew who it was. I didn't know this until like just before we started. So it's John Lee Hancock Jr., who's a screenwriter, film director, and producer, and he directed the movie The Rookie from 2002. Do you know what I'm talking about? It's got Dennis Quaid.
I know what you're talking about. I haven't seen it.
Yeah, it's a Disney film. Um,
Right.
and
Yeah.
basically Dennis Quaid, it's based off of a true story. So he was an aspiring baseball player and then got injured, became a high school teacher, and then was coaching the high school baseball team and was like throwing batting practice to them all the time, and then strengthened his shoulder enough, like unbeknownst to him, that he got way past the injury and he was throwing harder than he ever had before. And he ends up becoming the oldest rookie in Major League Baseball history who ended up
Mm.
pitching for the Tampa Bay Rays. And I love baseball and I absolutely love baseball movies. And that is one of the best baseball movies of all time. And it is so beautifully shot. It really is. Like, just seeing him on the mound, the usage of sunlight and shadow and all of that. Like, I remember watching The
Yeah.
Rookie and just being like, this is so beautifully done.
I'm sure that I have seen like stills from the film, and yeah, like I'm pretty sure that I'm thinking of oh man, scenes from that film where I have seen, yeah, like the orange
Yep.
of the sky, and yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So I'm like, I'm looking at it, I'm going, oh, okay, I'm starting to get it. Like, The Rookie is brilliant.
yeah,
And then The Blind Side, I have not seen that, but I know people love that
yeah.
movie. Sandra Bullock.
I have not seen it either. Yeah.
Yeah. But that's another sports drama, right?
Right, yeah.
Uh, um, and
Also
then,
based on a true story, I believe. Um,
yeah, you might be right. Saving Mr. Banks. And then, yeah, like, I think everyone on here is based off of a true story. And then The Founder, 2016
oh
with Michael
wow.
Keaton. Yeah.
That is really incredible.
That's very impressive.
Yeah, yeah.
Those
Wow.
are just the highlights on there. Let me just see, like, as a director, yeah, The Rookie, The Alamo, I have not seen. Saving Mr. Banks, The Founder. 2019, The Highwaymen. Oh, that's coming out on Netflix, like, in a few days. I'm sure if you're
Oh.
watching this whenever we release this, I mean, we filmed this just before we release it. Um, but no, I'm sure it's going to be out on Netflix whenever we do release the podcast. So The
Yeah.
Highwaymen, I'm sure I just saw like a preview for it, I think last night.
Okay.
So I
Gonna
think we
have
should
to
watch that
yeah,
because
I'm gonna have to check that out.
so
Um,
far every film I've seen of his, I love.
right. I think I own The Rookie on VHS, so I might be able to watch that as well.
Yeah,
Um,
he was the writer. Doesn't say like co-writer, just writer on Snow White and the Huntsman. Did you ever see that?
no, I didn't see it. I wasn't terribly interested in it.
Mm.
Again, like th- this really does go back to, the beginning of this podcast. We were talking about, like, this is the kind of uh, revisiting of old Disney classics that I really appreciate. Like,
Yes.
I'm not terribly interested in Snow White and the Huntsman. Not that it is a direct retelling of Walt Disney's story, but that this film, Saving Mr. Banks, is so good of, again, like, retextualizing the original film so that it, like, I as you said, like you want to go back and watch Mary Poppins as soon as you finished watching Saving
Yeah,
Mr. Banks, which is exactly how I felt. And I watched it before I went to go see Saving Mr.
right.
Banks, because
Yeah.
it still was like, oh, and I didn't even clue into the title, like what the title meant
Yeah, I
until
had
like
no idea.
most of the way into the film, and I was like, oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And, but yeah, like it's these are the kinds of films, um, like Christopher Robin and like this, where they're presenting a completely different, you know, way of looking at the original story, and
It
it's
opens it
not,
up. Yeah.
yeah,
It opens
uh,
it up to all these new ways of appreciating it.
right. Yeah. I mean, to be fair, I've never appreciated The Lion King more than when I saw the trailer for the new Lion King movie.
That's a good point. We appreciate the original so much more because we're like, what have you done? Everyone's going to appreciate. I think already just with the trailer of Aladdin, people appreciate Aladdin so much more.
Yeah, yeah. It's like we all love Will Smith, but you can't replace Robin Williams. You just can't.
Yeah, no,
There's no way.
nope. But yeah, I know it is. It's terrific the way it allows you to then. I'm tempted to even say it forces you because, but for lack of a better way of describing it, it forces you to appreciate the original more. Like
Yeah,
like you just
it does.
you cannot have like you cannot have the same level of appreciation for Mary Poppins after watching Saving Mr. Banks. You're not
Right.
going to watch it the same way again. And you're going to appreciate it more because you can still enjoy it for all the reasons you enjoyed it before. So it doesn't ruin it.
Absolutely.
It doesn't take away anything. It just adds.
Yeah, you get all this, added stuff of, how much the story meant to the original author, how much, Walt Disney connected with the story, how hard it was for Walt Disney to get permission to make this film, all the improvements that were made during pre-production, like with the song where, um, uh, a spoonful of sugar makes the medicine go down, and it's like when you go up when you say down,
Yeah.
it's like, oh,
Yeah.
that's really clever, like
It is.
it's
That's what
kind
I'm
of
saying
like,
is that you appreciate it more. That you're
yeah,
like, oh, I if you already liked the song, you like the song more. You
yeah,
know,
yeah,
uh, if you if you liked the penguins in the film, then you like the penguins more, right?
yeah,
Like all of those things, you like it more. And if you had issues with, like, let's say Mr. Banks as a character, you definitely now have a greater appreciation. Like you appreciate the
absolutely,
fact, like you're grateful for the fact that the film exists. You're like, oh, if this did even 1% for PL Travers personally of what this film suggests it did for her on an emotional level, on this psychological level, even on a spiritual level, if this did anything for her to help find healing and forgiveness and to be just whatever, like, then I'm happy that Mary Poppins exists, you
yeah,
know? Like,
absolutely, yeah. It's such a brilliant film.
yeah,
It's so amazingly well done, incredibly well written. I mean, again, like taking these real events, these real backstories, putting it all together into something that feels organic, and it's such a good film.
yeah, it really is.
And I feel I love it we're doing this review, because I feel like this film needs to get more people interested. Like
Yeah,
it needs to be seen by more
it does.
people.
Like, that's what I said at the beginning. I'm like, somebody, like, I wasn't kidding at the beginning. I legitimately hate Mary Poppins. That
It's
movie,
true.
like, it makes me cringe. It's just everything about it. Ugh. And it's like, and I love Saving Mr. Banks. So
Yeah.
the fact that, like, if you have somebody like me who just cannot handle, like, any aspect of Mary Poppins, although maybe I'm coming around, like, I have some appreciation for it now. Like I
Right.
legitimately
Yeah.
do. Like I said, I am grateful that it exists. I don't
Yeah.
know what will happen if I try to watch it again, but I expect that I probably will enjoy it. Um,
Wow, that is quite the change. Because I know we were going to have we had originally thought about doing a full podcast on Mary Poppins and why I love it so much and you hate it so much.
right.
And,
Right.
and
Well, now I don't see how I can like really defend my hate because there's all this ammunition now of like, wait, but if you understand this and
yeah.
this and this, like just
Yeah,
as a
I mean
text itself.
it's really interesting because there are still a lot of portions of the film Mary Poppins that I still don't really enjoy all that much. The tuppence for birds, the even oh man, Chim Chimney Chim Chimaroo or what I
Yeah.
don't even
Chim
know how
Chim
to
Chiroo.
yeah. That sequence goes on for far too long, or I guess it's the Step in Time song. It just goes on for far too long, and it like brings the film to a dead stop. And you're pretty far into the film at that point. Yeah, there are definitely portions of the film that I still don't don't enjoy. The great thing is is that none of the things that I didn't like in the original Mary Poppins were even talked about in this film. I don't know how that managed to be a thing, but it does make me feel like, oh, I just liked all the things that were emotionally resonant for Walt Disney and for
Right.
T.L. Travers. So
Right.
it's like those are the portions of the original that I actually really enjoy. And the other
Including
stuff
Mr.
feels like filler.
Right. Including Mr. Banks's mustache. Is he better with or without the mustache? Because that was a real issue.
Hmm. I don't know.
Yeah. Walt's like, I'm all mustache. And Travers is like, no mustache. That's so funny. Um, so what do you think? Should we watch Mary Poppins Returns or whatever that movie is called?
Uh, I I have actually seen
Oh,
it.
have you really?
Yeah.
Did you like it?
Uh, I enjoyed it. I would say it does not reach the highs, any of the highs that the original reaches, which I know is not saying much to you.
No, no.
Um, but I also don't think that it's more consistently good, I would say. You
Okay.
don't have songs like Tuppence for Birds.
Is it based off of a Travers story?
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's because the original Mary Poppins film was based on several different books in the Mary Poppins series.
Right.
So they just picked,
Oh, I
just
see.
that,
Gotcha.
and this film is doing that again, where it's just picking various things from different Mary Poppins stories. However, this one does follow um, uh, Michael and whatever the girl's name is, whatever the two children from the original, then they are all grown up in this film,
Oh,
in
okay.
Mary Poppins
That's
Returns.
like
So it
Christopher
really,
Robin. Like
yeah,
Christopher Robin, then he's all grown up, but you've still got all of his childhood characters, and then he's got a daughter, right? So
yes, yeah,
yeah, yeah. And like um I haven't seen it in forever, but Finding Neverland with Johnny Depp, who
Mm,
plays J.M. Barrie, the writer of
okay.
Peter Pan. You've never seen Finding Neverland?
Nope,
Oh, yeah, well you should
add it to
watch
my
that.
list.
Yeah, no, you should really watch that. It's been a long time since I've seen it. I think I saw it in the theater, but
I would
it's
I would definitely prefer to watch that, I think, over Escaping Neverland or whatever that new Netflix documentary is. Um,
oh,
that one's on Michael, or I guess it's on HBO or something.
I was
Anyway,
gonna
it's
say that's not on Netflix.
no, no. Sorry. Yeah, I think it's
But
on HBO, but
yeah,
yeah.
no, I think they're very different. Very different. It's
I
the
hope
same
so.
cinematic universe, but totally different tones.
Oh, I don't think it's the same cinematic universe. Escaping Neverland is it's about
No, no,
Michael
right.
Jackson.
But isn't that why Michael Jackson named it Neverland? Is based off of
Yeah, I guess that's
That's why I'm saying the same. It's just a very different tone. But yeah, but no, Finding Neverland is, like I say, it's been a long time since I've seen it, but similar in tone to Saving Mr. Banks, where it's got some serious emotional punch to it. So
Okay, cool. I will. Yeah, I've added it to my list. Man, I have so many films to watch.
yeah, I know. Me too, and I have so much reading to do and all of that stuff. But this was good.
Yeah, yeah, it went on far longer than I thought it would, but
Eh,
we just ignore the bell anyway.
we sure did. We could have ignored it, I think, like 3 times over. Yeah.
Just about.
All right. Are you good?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean, again, this film, Saving Mr. Banks, is absolutely brilliant. It's so well done. Every aspect of this film really is incredible. I can't recommend it enough. It's
Yeah, same here. Even if you have zero connection to Mary Poppins, even if you've never seen Mary Poppins, it makes no difference. You can still absolutely, thoroughly enjoy this film. It is so good.
I mean, as long as you're not David.
Right. I'm
If
not
you're
saying,
all about action films, MCU, full explosions and
and you
everything,
get
this isn't the
frustrated.
film.
That's right. If you get frustrated by a back and forth dialogue that goes on for more than 10 seconds, you will not like this movie because it's a lot of talking. I mean, not a lot, but I'm saying compared to, the
Yeah,
level
yeah.
of the lack of dialogue that you get in most action things. And I'm not saying everyone will like it, but I'm saying
Right.
even if you don't like Mary Poppins,
Yes.
then
Yeah.
you can
I would
still
say
fully
the
appreciate this
people
film.
who are watching this podcast are probably the kinds of people who are going to enjoy Saving Mr.
If you
Banks.
could watch a podcast of two guys just talking about a movie and showing zero clips from it, not even still images from the film, then it's like you probably like talking enough that you would enjoy the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, folks. Well, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Ignore the bell, people. We're gonna keep going. We're still ignoring it. Don't worry. I don't know what that. I think that's the fire drill. All right. We're gonna go home. Yeah. All right. We're done.